back with another Digimon video. So that's right, it's that magical time of the year where we have a new set coming out, and to coincide with the new set's release, we have an event to celebrate it. Bandai technically stopped labeling these pre-releases, even though they basically are still pre-releases. They just call them release events, but semantics of what these are actually called aside, this set is going to be releasing on July 25th of 2025, and this release event is going to be held just before it, which is going to be between July 18th and July 24th. So as far as the pricing, it's very standard compared to a lot of other pre-releases that we had. This time it's going to be of the BT16 Vikemon. He's getting an alt art, and the fact that this is a pretty decent and reasonable super rare that's getting reprinted with connecting art that's going to connect with the previous card that we got, which was the Paladin mode ace, is going to be pretty spicy and interesting to see what the final connection is going to look like, because there's going to be more cards following these connections. But art aside, as far as the other additional pricing, we're going to be getting at least one release pack. So this will contain the usual 2 cards in it. One card is going to be a foil uncommon with the release stamp, and one is going to be a rare with the release stamp as well. But as far as what you're actually going to be getting for winning this event, it is going to again be that BT16 Alt Art Vikemon Ace as the winner card, and this time to differentiate it from the base, it's going to be textured foiled. So stores might add additional pricing like extra booster packs based purely on if the store wants to. And speaking of stores and optional things, you're also going to want to make sure to ask your LGS if the participation promo, this time being Vikemon Ace, is actually going to be a legal card for you to use in this event, because some will allow it and some won't. So as far as things to keep in mind, these are just your general sealed rules. So I kind of condensed and simplified them. You could always go to Bandai's website and read them for yourself, but as far as what sealed is, it's basically exactly as it sounds. It's a sealed event where you're going to be opening up sealed booster packs. You're going to be opening up 6 booster packs to be specific, and you're going to be building a 40 card deck out of them. When it comes to additional rules to kind of spice up the gameplay compared to normal Digimon, and to actually accommodate for the fact that Digimon is not designed for sealed and limited environments, we do have a couple of additional rules that we're going to be following, like the fact that we could actually ignore color requirements when it comes to Digivolution, but we still have to meet level and cost requirements when it comes to being able to Digivolve a little bit more cleanly. Then when it comes to DNA Digivolution, we also get to ignore color for this, which is pretty nice, but again, similarly to normal Digivolution, we still have to abide by any other special conditions such as name, level, trait, and whatever that needs to be met in order to DNA. It's just making it a little bit easier by removing that color requirement. And then speaking of color requirements, you still have to meet the color requirements on the effects of your cards. So if a card is specifically interacting with, let's just say, a purple card, where it's going to add a purple card from your trash to your hand as just a base effect, then you can't ignore the color when it comes to that, and you still have to meet the color requirement in order to actually use that effect. Then options still also have to meet the color requirements in order to utilize the options, unless the option is specifically stating otherwise. So this way you need to have a card present on the field that's going to be matching the color of the option you're going to want to use if you actually are going to want to use the option. And then the only additional rule is the fact that when it comes to the breeding area, we do have a new way to utilize it, where we could just straight up raise a level 3 Digimon if you don't have an egg or you don't feel like wanting to hatch as an additional action for your raising area. So this way, if you just get screwed on your pool of cards, you could still have a Digimon that you could raise in your raising or breeding area, so that way you could still utilize that zone to form a safe Digimon. So the big thing when you're doing this is that you don't pay the Digivolution cost, or you don't need to meet the Digivolution requirements because you're not digivolving, and because you're not digivolving, you do not draw for raising a level 3 Digimon. So when it comes to looking at a set, you should always be focused on the rares and below, because these are the types of cards that you're going to be seeing and interacting with more than the higher rarity cards. So understanding what your pool of cards is most likely going to look or end up being like will help with your overall card analysis on what you're more likely to see, and that'll help focus and narrow the range in which you actually need to understand the cards that you're going to be wanting to use. So when it comes to pulling on packs, we should always also understand how a booster box works, so that way you could statistically figure out what your odds of seeing any specific card are going to actually be. So in normal booster boxes, we know that the pull rates, at least on the high rarity cards, are going to be an average of 7 SRs per box, with 2 hits, a hit being a alt art or a secret rare. So this set is going to be your average BT set, so we could expect the majority of the rest of it to act exactly the same as the majority of the others. So in that, when it comes to like a box situation, you're going to usually see 3 to 4 of any given common, 2 to 3 of any given uncommon, 1 to 2 of any given rare, and then that's where these SR pull rates kind of become a little bit sporadic when it comes to the likelihood of you seeing any given SR. So what does a normal booster box actually look like when it comes to the contents and how it's being broken down? Well, this is just your standard BT set on how it's generally laid out and functions when it comes to the rarity breakdown. So we do have to note in this set, we actually have it 12 SRs this time around. Some sets they like to up it, some sets they like to decrease it. So that's going to be important to know, is the likelihood of what SRs you're going to see, and then what SRs you have access to when you open up your cards. But again, this is why focusing on the rares, commons, and uncommons is going to be super important, because again, that's going to be the cards you're going to be playing and interacting with more than your higher rarity cards. So when it comes to deck building, remember, we have to build a 40 card deck of all of the cards that we pulled out of our 6 packs, and the extra cards basically become our sideboard. Some stores might have this event be a best of 1, some might have it be a best of 3. It really just depends on the store when it comes to that rule specifically, but it doesn't necessarily matter. That just matters on how often you are able to swap out cards in case you're trying to sideboard, but deck building is going to remain mostly the same between best of 1 and best of 3. So as far as what you're going to want to shoot for, you're generally going to want to try to shoot for as good of a curve as you possibly can. So when it comes to the level 2s, you're just going to play with whatever you got. Sometimes you'll have more than 5, sometimes you'll have less than 5. It really just depends on your overall pull luck. Then when it comes to level 3s, you're going to want to shoot for around 12 of those. Level 4s, you're going to want to shoot for around 10. Level 5s, you're going to want to shoot for around 7. Level 6s, you're going to want to shoot for around 5. And then that leaves you with 6 slots to do kind of just whatever you want with. So this could be additional Digimon of any given level just to try to help flesh out your curves and ratios better. It could be tamers, or it could even be options. So when it comes to card analysis, this is always going to be the trickiest part, because when looking at the pool of cards, you really have to think on the fly and quickly, and this acronym should help you be able to categorize what each of the cards are doing, and if a card is being able to fit into multiple different categories, usually that's going to be a very strong card. This is the acronym that I lifted from Magic the Gathering, and it's called BREAD. So B are going to be your bombs. These are going to be your win conditions and high impact cards. R is going to be removal. This is your ability to disrupt the opponent and clear out problematic cards. E is going to be evasion. These are your defensive cards that are going to help stave off damage or have some built-in protections to make it hard for the opponent to interact with. A is going to be aggro. This is going to be your general offensive cards, cards with good stats that are going to allow you to try to push for the game. On top of D, duds, which are going to be the cards you never or very rarely would want to ever use. But going into each of these categories a little bit more in depth with examples from the set, B is going to be your bombs. Usually these are going to be Digimon that are on the higher level, which are going to have the stronger abilities because it takes more time and effort to actually get up into them, and because of that, these are most likely going to be your win cons. Then when it comes to removal, again, this is the ability for you to interact with your opponents to some degree outside of just general combat. So effects that are going to remove the opponent's Digimon come in two different forms. The first is hard removal, and the second is soft removal. So hard removal is basically getting rid of the card off the field, and soft removal is making the card as useless as humanly possible. Then when it comes to evasion, these again are going to be your defensive mechanics to try to help stave off damage and make it very hard for the opponent to interact with you. So blocker, stun locking, which is suspending and making it so they can't unsuspend, security attack minus are all really good base forms of evasion, while also having different ways to protect your cards like reboot, armor purge, evade, fortitude, barrier, etc. Just make it harder for the opponent to actually, make any progress towards your field or your life to try to push for the game. Then when it comes to the aggressive cards, usually if the bombs are going to be your top end cards that are going to win you the game when you go up into them, ideally the aggressive cards are going to be your low to the ground cards, so that way you could get it to an easier win condition, if not being hyper aggressive being your win condition in of itself. So we have a lot of good cards that can take advantage of this, whether it's going to be cards with good stats or cards with just general good abilities that are going to help push a more offensive manner, like Rush, Alliance, or Security Attack Plus, on top of jamming, making the attacks safe. And sometimes it's good to try to pair up your more aggressive tools with some sort of value engine. Then you also do have some additional ways to be aggressive, like utilizing some tamers to make alternative play lines possible. And then, like I said, lastly, when it comes to this acronym, D are going to be duds. So these are going to be probably the worst cards in the entire set in the context of a sealed and limited environment. Because again, Digimon is not necessarily designed for it, so a lot of cards in Digimon are going to be asking for cards that are either way too specific, or it's going to be asking for a quantity that you reasonably can't reach when it comes to how certain cards are going to be working. And sometimes cards are going to be asking for cards that are not even in the set to begin with. So that's another thing that you have to look out for, is how effective this card is actually going to be, and am I reasonably going to be able to utilize it? And if you can't utilize it in a meaningful capacity, and it doesn't have an effect that's generically going to be meaningful, then it's most likely a dud. So now we're getting into some of the more nitty-gritty of the set, and I'm introducing a segment called Ace Checks, because after playing in a lot of pre-releases, I realized ace cards are very polarizing to the limited environment. So understanding the set's aces and what rarity level and what their abilities are going to be really important, so that way you could try to play around them as best as you can, because in limited, you reasonably don't have that many ways to be able to actually play around aces, making them even more potent and more powerful in this style of environment. Then when it comes to the Digitamas of the set, the majority of them are just basically do-nothing cards. The ones that you're going to want to support and focus more on, if you actually do pull them, are going to be the ones that are interacting with the CS trait, and the other ones kind of just aren't really going to be worth using, because you're most likely not going to be utilizing their abilities at all, and they're just going to be vanilla cards that are helping you draw cards when you digivolve on top of them, which is still fine, because it's better than Mother Eater, at least, which doesn't let you digivolve on top of her and asks for a whole bunch of extra support in order to be making her useful in any capacity. And then when it comes to the tamers, this set has a lot of tamers. So this set has a total of 15 different tamers. 9 of them are of the lower rarities, which means they're rare and below. And of these 9, 4 of them do not play or interact with the CS trait. So I would definitely prioritize the ones that are useful and interacting with the CS trait more than the ones that aren't, because, they are asking for more specific synergies, just like duds, in order to actually be really useful. So, there's a lot of things going on with this set, and one of the best generic rule of thumb pieces of advice I could offer you is don't necessarily try to line up specific synergies, especially try to force specific synergies if it's just that unreasonable and not most likely going to end up working because you don't have enough pieces to actually make it work. Try to stick more towards as many good, generically strong cards as you humanly possibly can, because those are going to be the cards that are going to be working for you no matter what the condition and situation is. Even though, yes, technically lining up specific synergies, the highs are going to be higher, it's just you're most likely not going to reach those highs very often. So the higher rarity cards in this set are going to be mostly of Mega level Digimon and other specific tamers, so it's not like you're realistically missing out on a whole lot by not pulling any high rarity cards when it comes to the sealed and limited environment and how we're going to be playing the game. With this set more specifically, it does have a very, very heavy focus on the CS or Cyber Sleuth trait. So looking at the whole card pool, about 60% of the whole set is dedicated to Cyber Sleuth cards. And we really don't have a whole lot of cross synergies outside of just Cyber Sleuth that's really worth mentioning. I mean, Puppets has a few cards that it's going to be interacting with DM just because some of the DM cards are also puppet traits. So that's like one of the more deeper archetypes, but it's not like super deep or deep enough really worth mentioning outside of literally just the CS. So my general piece of advice when it comes to deck building is really try to focus on the CS cards first and some of the other outside cards second. So one of the other things that I noticed when looking at the set is there's actually 0 removal options. Granted, the options we do have are already kind of just bad to where you're probably not going to want to run any options, but most of the removal as a result is going to be put onto Digimon bodies, and looking at all the Digimon bodies that actually are going to be either hard removing or soft removing, this set actually has a lot of hard removal when it comes to just straight up deleting the opponent's Digimon more specifically. So knowing the removal and the removal types will also help you evaluate what cards you want to try to prioritize in the deck you're trying to craft when it comes to how things are actually going to end up playing out. And then obviously tweak from there. I do think based on how the set is designed, it does want you to take a more aggressive slant because there's not that many defensive tools. Most of the defensive tools is literally just coming from removal or just trying to build a bigger and better stack than your opponent. So it's going to be aggressively slanted, but still be more tempo and stack based at the end of the day. And then when it comes to just some general meta tips, another big general rule of thumb is when it comes to the limited environment, it is all about whoever establishes board dominance first usually is going to end up winning. So if you can make a high level Digimon that the opponent can't out, you're most likely going to end up winning that game, and it's going to be up to the opponent if they to find a way to be able to deal with your Mega Digimon, or you just try to bait their Mega Digimon out and then kill theirs with yours, and then you're in a more dominant board state position, and most likely you're going to end up winning the game unless the opponent has very specific tools to be able to try to catch up and come back. So this is why there's two main approach to be able to establish board dominance, which is either low to the ground aggro or build a really powerful stack and try to outvalue and tempo the opponent. But enough with all of that meta talk. Let's just talk about some general tips when it comes to these style of events. So you're going to want to make sure you're as prepared as possible, not only just with card knowledge, but with the proper supplies as well. So you're going to want to make sure to bring some water, snacks, and actual TCG supplies like playmats and sleeves. So that way you can protect not only your body, but your cards as well. Then you're going to want to try to be relaxed and have as much fun as possible. This is a very low stakes event, and the whole point of sealed and limited events is to try to put everyone on as even of a playing field as possible, so not one person has a distinct card advantage over the other when it comes to walking into the event. Obviously, pull luck and deck building skills are going to be where the true test is going to be, on top of being able to understand how to utilize the cards with your actual gameplay. But if you want to try to do your absolute best when it comes to at least some of the deck building portions of it, you're going to want to ask yourself a couple of questions, like, what does my card pool even look like? What is my win con even trying to be? What are the synergies am I going to be playing around with? And what cards should I actually be prioritizing? So hopefully this video helps answer a lot of these questions when it comes to deck building, so that way you could build as quickly as possible and iterate on there based on the deck's performance in the games that you're going to end up playing. But that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts about this event and how well you did down in the comments below. And as always, thanks everyone for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of content and want to see more of it, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. And with that, I hope to see you all in the next video. Later.